The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects.
All right, welcome to the Earnestly Podcast. The host Earnestly is coming to you in a muggy ass South Florida. On the line with us, old friend of the pod, the host of Jonathon Sports in Christ, Utah, KOL 107.3, my man Jordan Buscarini, who's a daddy again for the second time. Jordan, what's up, bud?
Hey, EJ, it's been way too long. I appreciate the invite. I've been looking forward to this all week. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, are you getting any sleep?
Yeah. I'm fortunate because my wife, first off, she's a rock star. She's a teacher, so she's had the summer off, and so
right.
For her, she's like, okay, if the baby starts crying in the middle of the night, there's no reason for you to get up. I'll get up. I'll take care of it because I'm off all day. So.
Right.
I'm real fortunate in that regard. Now, that's about to change. With school starting back up. But I'll tell you, the first week, maybe the first 2 weeks, it was rough. I mean, it was seriously rough. And, I can go back and talk about that in a little bit because it does kind of relate to a topic I know we're going to get into. But,
right.
Man, having a baby it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, that is for sure.
It's funny because I remember you came on this podcast a couple of years ago. I want to say, when was Kobe born? Your oldest, Kobe, 2014 or 2013?
Yeah, 2014. Yep.
Yeah, a year after I had my first. I had my first in 2013. And I remember you saying, like, I think probably maybe a year or two after that, you're like, I think I'm good at one child. I think I'm good. One's enough. I'm good.
Yeah.
What did she coax you to having a second kid?
Yeah. So here's the thing. My wife grew up. Huge family. I mean, she's one of 7 kids.
Right. Oh, wow.
I grew. Yeah, I mean, so big family. See, I grew up with. Basically, it was just me and my dad because my parents they got divorced at such a young age, and my sisters went with my mom, and so it was basically just me and my dad the majority of my childhood. And so for me, I just I'm more accustomed to smaller families. Now, she wanted 4 kids. I wanted no kids when we first got together.
Seriously? You want 0?
I just didn't think I needed to have any kids. Now, I'm certainly glad I changed that because that would have been the biggest mistake of my life. So
right.
We just met in the middle. We met in the middle with 2, and it's over now. There's no possible way we can have another child, and so we have our 2 girls, and I'm as happy as can be.
Oh, you're done. So you're the same as I am. Although you're a lot younger than I am, so me is more so. Like if I was actually probably in my early 30s, I might consider a third one. But George's retired already. I'm done.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to deal with. And I'll tell you, my oldest, Kobe being 6.
Yeah.
I love that we waited because she's like a little mom, and I get the biggest kick out of watching it. I could sit and watch her all day long with her little sister. It's a beautiful thing. So I am glad
awesome.
We waited as long as we did. Just to watch that unfold it's a special thing, and it's somewhat similar to your situation as well.
Yeah, but I got boys though. It's a little different for me because the boys are, so Eli's 7 and Logan's 3, and they roughhouse each other all the time now. They're at that age now where like they fight. They love WWE, so they fight all the time. And I have to break it up after the little fights all the time. And my 3-year-old is a tough one too. He don't take no shit from anybody. He'll hit you back. Like I'll like scold him and he'll hit me. Like really? He's one of those. Yeah. So I think, not to sound sexist here, but I think you're in a good situation where, like, you're going to have the maternal, motherly, and which, by the way, it's going to benefit you as you get older, too, especially, because by nature, women are very protective. The boys are going to be the boys,
Right.
They're going to fights.
Right.
And, today, we're going to my mom's house, and we're on the way to, I got them some fries, McDonald's, and they're fighting over the Happy Meal toy. Because the young ones don't really care about having a big meal. The oldest one wanted the toy, whatever. So all of a sudden they're fighting over the toy. Like, stop. Really? Let's go. So.
See, and in my case, Kobe is a little girl. There's no question about it. But Kobe's got a tomboy side to her as well. She loves basketball, of course. She has to love basketball. She doesn't have a choice. Her name's Kobe.
Yes, exactly.
And she also trains jiu-jitsu. And so when Kobe wants to throw down, she'll throw down with me. But there's a pretty clear understanding in the household. you can throw down, you can choke dad out anytime you want, but it stops with dad. Like, there's nobody else you do that kind of stuff to.
Right.
So I've been on the opposite end of several guillotines, and I'll tell you what, they don't feel good coming from a 6-year-old with those little elbows and those little wrists. So.
I thought it was the cool one with the heroes that named for kids were based on our heroes. I had obviously my oldest son, Eli Jackson, in tribute to Michael. And then here you are with both your kids now holding names in tribute to your two heroes. It's great. You got Kobe Bryant for your oldest one, and now Elvis Presley for your youngest one.
Yeah. I'm blessed to have the wife that I have. I mean, and the great thing was, it didn't take any coaxing whatsoever. My wife, when we first started dating, my wife and I have been together about 11 years now.
Okay.
When we first started dating, she didn't know anything about sports. And I took her to a Laker game, and she became pretty interested in Kobe Bryant right out of the gate. And then before you know it, she became a big Kobe fan, and now she's a very big Elvis fan, has become a very big Elvis fan. We've gone to Graceland several times together, and so it took no coaxing. But I'm blessed. And the idea you mentioned the name hero, or you mentioned the word hero, and
right.
This is the thing. This is the thing about that particular instance. Like, the word hero is so vague, right? And I try to get people to understand this, because I've had several people tell me, you named your kids after two people that you have never met. And I said, well, first off, that's not true. I had the pleasure of interviewing Kobe several times. I met Kobe multiple times, but Elvis, I never met Elvis. Elvis passed away before I was even born.
Right.
The thing about a hero is someone that inspires or makes you a better person, right? I mean, is that your definition of a hero? Because that's my definition.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, 100%.
And I think everybody needs to be inspired by someone in some regard. See, in my household, we have a thing, and for as long as I can remember, whenever Kobe leaves the house, I ask her, how do we treat people? Her response is, like Elvis treats people. Well, Elvis was one of the greatest humanitarians the music industry has ever seen, right? So there's positive inspiration there. Kobe Bryant, the Mamba mentality attitude, that's something that I try to instill in my daughters, because why not? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to be the better version of yourself every single day? So, a lot of people look down on that, on the fact that you have heroes. And I understand that's a very vague term. I think everybody needs a hero. I really do. I really believe that.
I feel like, too, especially in this time, of unrest, politically, socially, everything. I just think sometimes we need even one bright light to whatever it may be. It could be an artist. It could be anything to inspire us to something positive. And I don't see why that's a bad thing, honestly.
I don't either. And so, like I said, I've had to explain that multiple times, and it's just the definition of a hero. It's such a vague word. I think that word means something different to everybody. But you and I, we've always been on the same page, man. You and I, in all the years that you and I have talked, we've come to the conclusion that we're cut from the same cloth somewhere along the line.
Right.
We've realized that.
We're pretty similar in a lot of ways. We haven't spoken in a long time on the record about Kobe Bryant and his passing. It's funny, 2020 was still in August, and so much has happened that it's easy to forget that Kobe Bryant passed away tragically in January. It's mind-boggling out with everything that's going on. If COVID wasn't a thing right now, Kobe Bryant will still be the biggest thing on the news right now. To be honest, his death will still be the biggest story.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think when you go back and you look at 2020, it's I'm not going to say it's the biggest story, but it's what kicked everything off.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously. I mean, it's been a downward spiral since January 26th. It has been a downward spiral. And, that was just a surreal day. One of those moments, there's two moments in my lifetime where I will remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing when I heard news. One, the passing of Michael Jackson. I will never forget that day.
Where
Two,
were you?
The passing of Kobe Bryant. I was in college. In college when Michael Jackson passed away. And driving home from a class. And I was listening to the radio, and I pulled over to the side of the road and had to pull out my phone because I just didn't believe it. And that was before everyone had a smartphone.
Right.
So
or at least the early days.
But I know,
right.
Is this true? Yeah. This is 2009.
2009.
Yeah, 2009. So not everybody had a smartphone, And so I'm texting people that I know, like, whoa, is this real? Did I really just hear this? Because I'm listening to the college radio station.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's not out of the norm for some crazy stuff to come through there that isn't exactly true. So,
right.
Yeah, I'll never forget the day that Michael died, but I'll never forget the day Kobe died. I mean, that was absolutely devastating. I mean, it was complete. And EJ, I mean, you would be one to speak better upon this, but the news of Michael Jackson passing away was a shock, but it wasn't a shock.
Correct.
Right? Like,
correct.
Kobe passes away, and it's, what the hell? It's completely different.
It's funny because I was telling my wife last night, you know, I was actually more shocked in the moment about Whitney Houston dying, for example, in 2012. Who I'm a big fan of hers also, too. Than it was of Michael's. I'm a little more plugged into Michael and what's going on with him, and he was not well. Like, I was talking to people like weeks before his passing, days before his passing, who were at the Staples Center doing his rehearsals, and they were telling me he's underweight. You know, and so it was not as stunning as his death as, say, Kobe's was. Like, to me, it sounds weird, but there was some relief when Michael died for me in some ways. I was only concerned about his kids. Kobe passing away, and I remember where I was. I was walking on Target with my boys. We just had pizza at the Pizza Hut little stand in Target, and we go to the car, and I start getting this like text from my sister about, "You hear about Kobe Bryant died?" I'm like, "Huh?" So then I started going on, you know, obviously what we do, we always go on Twitter and we start checking things and whatnot, and like we start hearing these things, and some of them are hoaxes. We think it was a hoax, whatever. And then I start looking at all this, and I start sending texts to Jabari, our friend Jabari Davis, and people like, it's like, I'm not saying, is this true? Are you sure? Did I even text you? I think I texted you also that same day, didn't I?
You did. Yeah, you did. Yes, you did.
Right. And I remember saying, this is true? What is this? And then when he started hearing reports from legitimate sources that, yes, he did pass, and the possibility his whole family was on that helicopter. Thank God they were not. Obviously it's tragic how you slice it, but you know, we were hearing at the time the news was so muddy about who was on the flight. First they were saying it was a few daughters, and it was the whole family. There was just Kobe. There was Kobe and his daughter. So I mean, it was such a this is easily for me top 2 or 3 celebrity deaths of shock for me. Kobe Bryant, and my heart sank. Like I was depressed the entire day. I mean, I couldn't focus on anything. I was actually watching NBA TV's footage and coverage of the passing, and then my kids were like, you know, I kind of like was barely focused on my kids all day. To be honest with you, I was stunned. I was stunned.
Yeah. Yeah, it was shocking. It was shocking to say the absolute least. I mean, it was one of those deals where, and you know, me hosting a daily sports talk show, it was the first time that I had ever actually dreaded going to work. Like, I did not want to go to work. This happens on a Sunday. I do not want to go to work Monday and have to talk about this for an hour, because honestly, I didn't know if I could make it through an hour show of doing it.
How'd you do?
And then from a parent standpoint, I'm sorry, what was that?
How'd you do in the show? Did you make it through the show without any, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I tried. I definitely tried.
Right.
You know, I had help. You mentioned Jabari, a good friend of ours, Jameson, a good friend. They helped me out definitely on the show. We put together a solid show. It was tough to do. It was really tough to do. I will tell you the most difficult aspect of it was it honestly became the first conversation that I ever had with my daughter about life and death.
Oh, wow.
And that was and we're blessed that she was 5 at the time. So we're blessed that we hadn't really had to deal with that in our family or in our lives at that point in time. But that was the first time where I actually had to sit down with my daughter and explain to her the difference of life and death and what happens to people that we care about. And I tell you, EJ, I mean, it affected her. I mean, she was tore up. She was really tore up. She wants to play basketball. She wants to be Kobe Bryant. So that was just it was a tough situation all the way around. And it was sure touching to see how many people he had touched globally. And I think sometimes we understate that, right? Like we live in this country and we forget about the impact that this one man made globally.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's easy to forget about that.
Yeah. No, and what you did for women's sports, especially too. I mean, I'm glad that a lot of good came out of this, in the sense that a lot of things, the positive things that obviously there's some negatives that came out. You know, people want to bring up the negatives in the past in Colorado, and I believe me, I had a field day on Twitter that same day when he passed away with some of these blue check mark idiots trying to make this about something that's not. But I'm glad a lot of the positives came out too about Kobe's, humanity, because a lot of his humanitarian effort stuff wasn't really, I mean, honestly, on a national level, was not known as much. Like obviously in LA, the homeless thing stuff he's done with the homeless and whatnot is a big deal in locally, but nationally here anyway, at least outside the bubble of LA, you don't really hear as much about the other things he was doing outside of basketball. And it was good to hear that actually. Unfortunately, in this situation, his passing, but it was good to hear that.
Yeah, and I think the reason why this man had so many fans that cared so passionately about him. I mean, look, the Kobe stan stories on Twitter are legendary, right?
Of course,
like Kobe fans are they're a different group, and the reason Kobe fans are a different group is because Kobe's fans understood everything that he was doing before he passed away. They understood life after basketball. They understood everything that Kobe had accomplished. We watched this guy grow up. Like we literally watched this kid grow up into a man. And if you're not a Laker fan, you missed a lot of the moments that Laker fans got to see. So it's just Kobe fans are unique, and I think it goes back to just about anything you want to talk about. If we're talking about Michael Jackson, if we're talking about Elvis Presley, if we're talking about Kobe Bryant, their fans see things that the casuals do not see, and these are men that accomplished extraordinary things. And I'm just listing three because that's who we've been talking about. But when you have these individuals that have this type of global following, sometimes those who don't understand it are simply ignorant on the topic.
Of course.
That's when you need to take the time to actually learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, that was my take on Kobe. I think you're 100% correct. Some of the positives, I think a lot of people have learned, wow, this guy was doing some incredible things. And it is sad to see. I mean, Granity Studios, there are times I think Kobe isn't here, to be honest with you. I check out Granity Studios all the time still, just to see what was happening, just to see some of the work, some of the projects. I catch myself sometimes going to Kobe's Twitter account. I forget that he isn't here. And in this day and age, with everything that's happened over the last, 7 months, boy, we could really use a voice like Kobe who would touch people globally. Couldn't we really use a voice like that right now?
Without question, especially now. I mean, look, we have COVID going on. Oh, by the way, it's an election year too. On top of that, with the most polarizing president in history of our nation. I mean, it's just, that's what I was saying. Like, it's not funny really, but all that's happened, and Kobe Bryant's passing was a big deal, but yet it got usurped by a pandemic. And of course, when that happens, that's lockdown, whatever first. So it's 2020 has been. Look, I'm 40 years old. This is by far the strangest year I've ever had in my life, by far. So.
Yeah, I mean, I got some stories from my daughter, man. She was born during a pandemic. That was crazy. Having a daughter born during a pandemic, that was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the whole situation. And I haven't really talked much about this. My wife had some serious complications during the pregnancy, some serious complications. We spent about 7 to 8 days in the hospital. She was in the ICU for about 4 or 5 days. And, EJ, it's almost eerie when you go back and you look. I go back and I think about what that experience was like.
Right.
Because the hospital's a ghost town. Like, there's nobody there. There's nobody in rooms. We're extremely fortunate in my neck of the woods of Utah. COVID hasn't run rampant, so the hospital was a ghost town. Nobody's allowed into the hospital. I had to wear a mask the entire time I was in the ICU. I had to sleep with a mask on. Like, you go back and you look at the experiences that COVID is, and the other thing that I guess you have to realize, and going back to my wife's issues that she had during this pregnancy, all the focus is on COVID, but people still get sick from other things, and COVID even affects that.
Right.
I don't think that doesn't get talked about enough. Like, it has completely changed the landscape of it. And like I said, we're blessed here in the state of Utah where COVID hasn't been a massive deal, especially where I'm at. But still, even the protocols have affected everything. And so the 2020 has been wild. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, you're in a small town. Price, Utah's a small town, right?
Yeah, Price is a small town. The radio station, we cover 3 to 4 counties. So we cover all of eastern Utah. But my area, it's a small town we're looking at. So, we've had 47 cases at the time here tonight. We've had 47 cases of COVID. And I think 20 of them are open at the moment. We've only had 2 hospitalizations.
47
I think
cases.
We've had 4.
Wow.
Yeah,
dude, I was guaranteed we have 47 cases on my block.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like we've been so fortunate, and in all of Eastern Utah, I mean, that's taking Price, that's going down to Moab, everything in between. We've only had 4 hospitalizations, so we've done very, very well.
Holy crap. Dude, you live. This is like night and day with me and I. This is where the similarities end. You know, you're in a small town. I'm in a dense Palm Beach County. I live literally 10 minutes from Donald Trump's house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
it's almost like we're living in an NBA bubble with the amount of COVID tests that we've had.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Speaking of COVID and adjusting, the NBA restart. How you liking it?
Defense is obviously ahead of offense. There's no question about that. I'm enjoying it. There's something to watch. You know what I'm really enjoying? I'm enjoying day baseball and day basketball. But we've never had that.
I agree. How about a Heat game to that 4? How about a Heat game to that 4:00 in the afternoon on a Thursday? That's weird.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, at the radio station that I work for, we're a Utah Jazz affiliate. We had a Utah Jazz game at 11 a.m. I love it.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it.
Could you get used to that, couldn't you?
Yeah. It's honestly something that I know the league would never go to, but you know, you go to a baseball game, you go to like a day game on a Tuesday, you can typically expect a lower crowd. They play 162 games. Right. Obviously, it's not a format for basketball, but boy, I would love to leave work at 9 o'clock in the morning to say I'm going to a Jazz game.
Yeah. I mean, this is just weird though, seeing like, you know, like I know obviously if you live in the West Coast, you know, having games early, like especially in football season, you know, having a football game starts at 10 a.m. as opposed to 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. You know, and obviously it's a norm. But just seeing NBA games on a weekday, I'm at work and I'm seeing an NBA game right off the bat. Like, wow, I get used to this definitely.
Yeah, because it reminds me a lot of MLK Day, which is such a monumental day for the NBA. I mean,
of course,
when you have the casual fans, there's really 2 days that stand out to me for the casual NBA fans. Of course, you got the diehard fans that as soon as the season starts, they're watching every game every night. But then you have 2 dates for casual fans. You have Christmas Day, and then you have MLK Day. And at MLK, we have basketball games all day long. It's a beautiful, beautiful day for the NBA. So it's somewhat reminiscent of that at times, you know, because that's really the only day that you ever see basketball at noon, 2, 4, 6, 8.
Yeah.
And we're getting that every day. Yeah, I like it. I enjoy it.
And yet we're home. Like, we're actually most of us are home in those days. This is a normal, regular Tuesday, Wednesday daytime where you're doing the regular job, you're going to work, what's that, and basketball's on, by the way. There's no 7:30 game. It's on right now. Like, wow. Like I said, I can get used to this, definitely. I can definitely get used to this.
Yeah.
Any takeaways, though, on the court so far weekend? Anything that you want to touch on, like, in terms of, like, what's gotten your eye so far?
Portland has caught my eye, and I'll tell you what, I know the Lakers, it's a done deal. They're the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and I fully expect the Lakers to take care of Portland. But that's a 6 or 7 game series. I mean, that backcourt will give them fits. Carmelo Anthony looks reborn in a sense.
Slim Mellow, man.
This Portland team, this Portland team is they're exciting. They're fun to watch. And I'll tell you what else. People need to start giving the Phoenix Suns a chance. Like, if you're one of those casual basketball fans, and it's late at night, you have the league pass. I love West Coast baseball. I love West Coast baseball because when I put the kids down to bed, my wife typically goes to bed. It's just me in the house, and I can watch West Coast baseball. It's like the MLB ticket. Yes, it's the best. Same concept with the NBA. And you look at this Phoenix Suns team. The Suns team's good, and Devin Booker is really, really good, and DeAndre Ayton is really, really good. I've had a freaking ball watching the Suns team play. That shot that Devin Booker hit the other day against the Clippers, where he shook Kawhi and then went over the top of Paul George, that was as Kobe-esque as it gets.
Funny thing is he mentioned Kobe today, about that. Talking about that shot, talking about Kobe's with him, that kind of thing.
I mean, he channeled his inner Mamba. So those have been the big takeaways. I still don't think we've seen the best of LeBron. I still don't think we've seen the best of the Bucks. I know they lost to the Nets the other day, but in the same token, Giannis played like 16 minutes. Chris Middleton played like 16 minutes. I know they gave your Heat the rundown in the second half in today's game. So,
it's terrible.
I mean, I don't really know what to expect. Here's the thing. The seeding games at this point in time are almost worthless.
They are, because really, there's the home court advantage at this point.
Yeah, so the 1 seeds are locked up. We know Milwaukee's got the 1. We know the Lakers have the 1. From that point on, does it these games get right. Get right. That's why LeBron didn't play against the Rockets. You're going to see a lot more of this moving forward. I know the Jazz are sitting out a bunch of players as well because these games are now virtually worthless. If you feel that you are right, there's no reason to play these games.
It matters to the battle for the 8th seed because obviously you're just trying to get into the party.
Yep.
Obviously. So, Portland's interesting in Phoenix and all that. I agree with you 100%. And to me, I think I've been saying this in the last couple of weeks. I think no home court advantage opens up the door for parity here. It's no longer a 5-team race. This could go. I mean, really, if you think about it, this can go 8-10 deep now of serious contenders for the title.
Sure, and going back to the seeding not meaning anything, I mean, really, the only reason the 1 seed means anything is because if things do go as planned, 2 and 3 are on the opposite side of the bracket. That's the only reason why the 1 seed means anything. And when I look at the Western Conference, odds are it's going to be Portland. Odds are Portland is going to get in. I mean, I'm curious to see the way the play-in game works out. I'm curious to see the play-in series, whatever you want to call it. I'm curious to see how that works out. But odds are it's going to be Portland. And I'll tell you what, Portland's not Orlando or Brooklyn. This is going to be a serious challenge for the Lakers in the first round, if that's who it is.
Portland's dangerous, man. They're dangerous.
They are.
Again, Slim Mello. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, was it a wake-up call? I don't know, but he looks great.
Yeah, and let's think about this. I mean, really, just off the top of your head, if he ever remotely, at any point in time in his career, remotely played with a backcourt as skilled as C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard?
No, not as good. I say the only team I would even come close to that is that 09 Nuggets team with Chauncey. And was it J.R. Smith that started on that team also, or was it somebody else?
They had AI.
Was AI on that team also too in 09?
AI was gone, I believe, by 09. They did have J.R. Smith. 09 was the year they lost to the Lakers in the conference finals. AI was gone. AI was gone.
That was good. That was a good series. That was a good series.
Yeah, it was. It was a solid series. Yeah, you had J.R. Smith. You had Chauncey Billups. You had Melo. Yeah, it was a solid team, too. You had Kenyon Martin was actually pretty solid in that series as well. So, yeah, that's a good point.
No, not as good as – no.
McCollum and Damian Lillard, though?
But not as good as this backcourt still. I mean, that's without question. This is the best one he's ever played with. So, yeah. I don't know, man. They I don't – seven's locked up, right? I haven't looked at the standings. Seven is this 8 or bust, right? That's it?
It's 8 or bust. Yeah, 7's locked up.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun finish to the season. Your Dodgers – so far, as of recording, 9-4, a plus 33 run differential, best in baseball. Feels like with a 60-game season, this is probably your best chance in 32 years to actually win a title.
I would say yes, but in the same token, I'm going to say no based on the playoff format. Now that you have 63 teams getting into the postseason, I don't get me wrong, the Dodger team is fantastic. I still believe that 2017 team that lost in 7 games to the Astros, tough to top that team. I mean, they were solid rotation-wise. For all the grief that Dodger fans want to continue to give Yu Darvish, they're not in that position. If it wasn't for Yu Darvish, he was fantastic in the postseason up to that point in time. I do have some questions about the rotation, but the idea of taking 53% of the Major League Baseball teams really diminishes the accomplishment of winning your division now.
That's true.
And that worries me because the best 2 out of 3 series in the opening round, anything can happen 2 out of 3 in baseball. I mean, we saw it last year with the Washington Nationals. I mean, who would have thought the Nationals were going to take the Dodgers out in 5 games?
Exactly.
That's because they shortened that series. They made it a best 2 out of 3 series. They shortened it, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I've got to believe that this Dodger team is right up there with 2017. Again, the rotation I still have a few problems with. They may need to add another arm. I think they will. But in the same token, man, 53% of the teams going to the postseason. And there's some dogs in the National League now. Don't sleep on San Diego. It's a really good team. The Rockies have played lights out. The NL West is actually a much better division than I think a lot of people wanted to believe going into the beginning of the year. San Diego may be a year ahead. Atlanta's going to struggle a little bit now without Soroka. But when you look at the divisions front to back, there's some dogs in the National League.
Oh, yeah. The NL has always been, especially the last couple of years, always been deep. Like, a lot of players in there. As a Mets fan, I'm done. Like they win 2 games here and there. I'm like, oh, I'm back in it. And then they lose, to Atlanta. Atlanta, like, okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna fall for this trick again. Every time I get my heart into it again, it gets broken again. So I'm not even gonna try to invest to the Mets this much this year anyway, because I can't. It's just too much, dude. This team is. There's always that one team you root for. Like you may have like a lot of teams you love and do well, there's always that one team you root for is like, fuck, every time, they just let you down.
Yeah, speaking of the Mets, it was like a week ago. I'm watching the Mets, and I want to say it was the Braves. If memory serves me correct. And Cespedes comes up and knocks a home run. And I thought, good. My wife's sitting on the other couch. I explained to her what Cespedes had gone through. You look at the amount of money that the Mets decided to pay him. You look at the amount of money that they decided to pay Jed Lowry. To give Jed Lowry a $220 million deal. This guy's had 9 at-bats, I believe, is what he's had so far during his Mets career in a year and a half. And Cespedes, to me, was a feel-good story. And then he vanished, and I was extremely worried about Cespedes. And then you find out, he just decided he doesn't want to play anymore. Just bizarre. A couple of bad contracts on that Met team. You got to do something with Pete Alonso and his 180 average. That's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's still early, but still.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It is.
No, that's Cespedes thing is weird. It's just weird. One minute you're worried about him, next day, that's not playing anymore. And I don't know what the truth is, how it was handled. But geez, I mean that's just that the way he did that fits the Mets narrative, period, in discussion.
That was scary.
Yeah,
wasn't it scary?
For a couple hours, yeah, it was. Like, is he okay? Something happened to him?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm out now. I'm like, okay, you can at least checked in and told your boss that, instead of having everybody else worry about you.
It's only the Mets, man.
Only the Mets. Have you had an issue adjusting to no crowds? Any of these sports?
No, I haven't. I haven't really for baseball. I mean, honestly, as I'm watching the game, the strategy and the nuances of baseball took me into the point to where the cardboard cutouts and the piped-in noise, sometimes I forget that there are no fans there. I know that probably sounds really weird to a lot of people, but if you're looking, for instance, Dodgers-Padres just last night, I mean, we had a thrilling 7-6 game. Chris Taylor guns out Grisham at the plate. The game was so thrilling that you forget that there are no fans there. You hear the pipe noise coming through. Every now and then you realize, oh yeah, it's because the noise is being piped in. Like when you hit a foul ball and you hear everyone cheer, that doesn't happen in an actual baseball game. So every now and then I forget that there are no fans in the stand. And then, like tonight, I was watching the Royals game, and there's a Weekend at Bernie's cutout stand-up behind home plate.
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that. I got to check it out, though.
Yeah, Bernie Womack just chilling behind home plate.
Yeah.
So, no, I've actually enjoyed it. Now, I know you can't go on with this. Trust me, I miss going to the ballpark. I mean, in the state of Utah, we have the Angels AAA affiliate, one of the most beautiful AAA fields in the entire country. I miss going to baseball. I love going to
Who's the closest Major League team to you?
To go to.
Who's the closest Major League team to you? Like, in terms of distance, like if you want to go to a Major League game, you say, I want to go to a game today. Which team is closest to you? Like, obviously there's no team in Utah, but you're between Colorado and California and Nevada. Which team is the closest to you?
Rockies. Colorado.
Rockies, okay.
Yeah, in fact, last year my wife and I, it's about a 5-hour drive. We were feeling kind of froggy. My daughter was off with her grandpa, so we decided to drive from Utah to Denver, watch the Dodgers-Rockies, and drove back that night. That was a crazy day. It was about a 10-hour round trip.
Nice little date day. I like that.
What's that?
Nice little date day. I like that. Let's go to Colorado. Let's go to Colorado. Let's see a Rocky game.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go to the Dodger game. Let's get up and go. So we did that. So yeah, that's the closest for us. But again, if you want to go watch AAA baseball, I mean, we got a premier stadium here in the city of Utah. It's fantastic. Smith Ballpark in Salt Lake. It's beautiful. Sometimes you'll see some real good talent come through. The Angels had a pretty good farm system, and so hey, I miss that. I mean, I miss going to Coors. And if you've never been to Coors Field, I highly recommend you go to Coors Field.
I'm dying to go one day. I told my wife once my boys get a little older, one of our things we're gonna start doing hopefully is doing trips to stadiums just as a tradition.
Yeah, you'll love Coors. I mean, you'll absolutely love Coors. It's cheap. Concessions are cheap.
Oh, really?
It's the only bit. I mean, you can get a beer for $4.
We love cheap here.
You can get a $4 beer.
Oh, we love cheap. We love cheap in this family. Trust me.
Yeah, I do too. I think everyone does. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Coors Field. You got to put that on your to-do list as far as baseball stadiums. It's unique, and then it's Denver. And Denver is a beautiful place.
I haven't had any issues adjusting to this stuff. And by the way, the NBA has done a great job also with not just on the court in the bubble, but also with the TV and the way they film these games. It's like you forget for a second sometimes that, wait, this is actually a bubble. This is actually no one in that room outside of the required personnel. But they've done a good job in the NBA also of making it as close to a real NBA game with crowds as possible.
Yeah, and I think, a lot, I don't think we can overstate the leadership and the job that Adam Silver has done in the NBA. I don't think it can be overstated.
Right, I agree.
And it really hits, EJ, when you look at baseball and the situation that Major League Baseball's been in, the lack of leadership from Commissioner Rob Manfred, the two sports are completely different. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people involved with Major League Baseball, and Rob Manfred has pushed literally all the wrong buttons over the past 4 to 5 months.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like that has been the case with Adam Silver at all. So, when you talk about the restarts, the NBA has done everything right. I mean, you have to tip your hat to Adam Silver. You have to tip your hat to the idea that a players' association is on positive terms with its commissioners, right? Like, that doesn't happen very often.
Right, I agree. And, I mean, do you think baseball makes it to the finish line? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they do. I think that, I think there's a lot can happen between now and then. I hate the idea that there is no bubble. I mean, to me, the safest plan would have obviously been to play in Arizona. Could have had a bubble in Arizona. It was possible to get that done. For whatever reason, that didn't come through. I know there's several different reasons as to why that didn't happen. But I hope that the Marlins and Cardinals situation is a wake-up call to players that maybe had a sense of false security.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what that was, and I'm hoping that right there was kind of a wake-up call as to, okay, look, we're 12 games into the season, and you look at the Marlins, and they played 7 games, I think, at this point in time. We're 13, 14 games, actually, in the season. They played 7 games, right? The same thing with the Phillies and the Yankees, and that's the thing. It wasn't just affecting those two teams. It actually shifted the entire league. So hopefully it was a wake-up call, and if that's the case, yeah, I think we get through the season. I really do.
This is probably going to make you chuckle a little bit because I was saying a while ago how hasn't been a big adjustment for me watching without crowds, because the reason why I have had a hard time watching the NBA or Major League Baseball or even hockey without crowds is because I've been doing this for the last 5 months with wrestling. WWE and AEW are both doing it without crowds, and to be honest with you, they've actually sort of set the benchmark of how to do this. Like they were initially doing no crowds, and then they have now their personnel now on the outside. WWE has like a plexiglass around the ring and around the crowd, what a crowd would be, and they've actually done I'll say this much: AEW has done a phenomenal job with this more than anybody else, because the owner of AEW is actually also the son of the owner of the Jaguars, so they have a little section outside the stadium where they can do their shows, and they can still do the shows as though they're doing it in arenas, have the fireworks and all that, and their show sometimes you forget there's no crowd there, just the personnel. I know it's funny to say that, because I know wrestling is not really a sport; it's scripted and all. But to be honest with you, watching this wrestling for the last 5 months, in the COVID era, has actually it prepared me for basketball and baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I know I give wrestling a hard time.
I know you do. I love it.
You know what's funny though? You bring up wrestling, and I'm a movie guy, and I know we'll get into TV shows in a moment. I'm a movie guy, and I happened to come across this movie. I guess it came out like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Wrestling with my family, or was it Fighting with My Family? Is that what it was called?
I'm not entirely sure.
The Page story.
I'm not entirely sure, actually.
It's fairly new, and I watched it, and I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, it had The Rock, it had Vince Vaughn in it. It was kind of enjoyable.
Okay.
And so before you know it, I start looking up to check the accuracy of the movie to factual events, and then before you know it, I'm looking up. I'm starting to go through things of the Attitude Era, and I'm starting to go through things of the Golden Era. And before you know it, I have been looking at wrestling videos for about 3 hours on my phone on my couch.
I was just going to ask
the only
you.
thing I can think of, the only thing I can think of is you. The only thing I can think of, like DJ can't find out that I did this.
What? Here's the thing. Okay, so I came on your show a couple of years ago because I think the topic was ESPN starting to publish wrestling as though it's a real sport, and you're not on the same page. It's not a sport, and even as a fan as I am now, I still agree with you that it's not a sport. It should be on ESPN. It troubles me that FS1, and granted they do this for content purposes because of the COVID whatnot, but it is not a real sport. I take wrestling for what it is. It's a scripted, it's scripted entertainment. It's sports from degree, but sports entertainment. But it's scripted, and I take what it is. I don't make it more than it is. And and by the way, it wasn't until last year I started watching a new product. For the first time in 17 years. I had stopped watching in 2002, and I went 17 years without watching the current product. When I got the network in 2014, it was solely for the library, not for the new stuff. Now I'm back into it now, but I also separate what it really is. It is not NFL. It's not the NBA. It is separate from everything else. And once you figure that out, you can go on with it and everything else.
Yeah, you've hooked me a couple of times on Twitter by posting an old video. You and Randy Cruz have done a great job of that.
Randy Cruz is the man.
Yeah, he is. He certainly is. You guys will post an old video, and then I will see. I'll see Bret Hart winning the championship. I think you posted one the other night. It was Shawn Michaels with a guest referee.
Right.
Bret Hart and The Undertaker.
Yeah.
So then
SummerSlam '97.
my curiosity gets the best of me, and I got to figure out how The Undertaker had the belt going into SummerSlam. And so before you know it, it's a history lesson on. And this is the one thing that's always bugged me. This is the one thing that, and maybe you could shed some light on this, being the big wrestling guy that you are. How is it that all these years later, this guy Bret Hart is still pissed off about a scripted event that took place like 20, 25 years ago?
Yeah.
How is it that this guy is still pissed off about this?
He's one of those guys that took the business way too serious. And again, I'm with you. I'm with you. I think my love for wrestling more than anything else has nothing to do with the wrestling itself anymore. It's always been, growing up with the storylines, of course, but more so now than ever, it's more so the backstage stuff, the dirt sheets, and reading. Like, what really got me back into wrestling really the last 2 years was that I started the podcasts that were, from this guy called Conrad Thompson. He has like 5 different podcasts, and he'll have like personalities on one of each shows he runs, which by the way is really big now. The guy that played Brother Love, for example, for in the 80s and 90s, he was actually also Vince McMahon's right hand man. So he has stories for days. I mean, stories. So they'll do a episode on Hulk Hogan's 1987. They do a story on Macho Man's entire career. They do a story on Sable, on Stone Cold Steve Austin. Why did he leave in 2002? The way he walked out. And the storytelling from the backstage, not so much on the screen, but off screen, is way more interesting than the on-screen stuff. And I think that's what really hooked me back into it again in present day.
No, I can buy that, because in this area, we got a pretty big following for wrestling in this area, and so from time to time, I'll bring a wrestler on the show. And I remember the first one I brought on was Jake the Snake Roberts. And I thought, okay, well, I'll get this will be a good 10, 15-minute segment with Jake the Snake. Before you know it, Jake the Snake and I, we'd gone over time on my show. He'd been on the show for over an hour. It was just that fascinating, right?
Remember that.
So a few years later, I bring on another guy, and same thing. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a good 10 to 12-minute segment. We bring in Mark Merrow. Mark Merrow's story was incredible. And so before you know it, I have Mark Merrow on the show for a good 30, 35, 40 minutes. The stories behind the scenes are fascinating with these guys.
Absolutely.
They really are.
Like Jake, especially, too. Jake was on Joe Rogan last year for almost 3 hours talking about his story.
Yeah.
These guys and what they've gone through and what they've seen in the business and whatnot, it's fascinating, and it's what hooked me back in. Look, the on-screen product in terms of in-ring competition is much better now than it has ever been at any point. But the characters today are just not the same as they were in the 80s and 90s. It's not the same. There's a divide there.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
Yeah. TV show real quick. You and I are big Full House fans. Full House fans. The show ended, obviously, I believe was it this spring, right? Was it spring that ended? Yeah. My 7-year-old is addicted to the show, for the record. Did you like the way it ended?
Yeah, I was sad to see it end. Like I said, I'm a movie guy. I have a hard time. I'll go to work, and people will tell me all the time, hey, you got to watch this show. Because I'm very narrow-minded when it comes to TV shows.
Really?
I watch Full House. I watch The Office. I'm very narrow-minded, very, very narrow-minded with it. My wife, she'll watch anything. I don't want to do that. And maybe it's because, look, you know me. I'm kind of a studio rat. I'm at the radio station 15 hours a day. I'm a studio rat.
Yeah.
So in the limited time that I have, I want to get in, I want to get out, and it's got to be something that entertains me. And that's why I'm a movie guy. I can sit down and I can watch a movie in 2 hours. And so when someone will tell me at work, hey, watch this series, but the first season's a little meh, I'll watch one episode, and if it fits what they have told me, it's going to take a full season, I'm not going to watch it. I just, no thanks, I'm good. And so I'm very narrow-minded with my shows. I'll watch any movie, but shows a little bit different. So Full House, it wasn't a great series. I mean, it was nostalgic. John Stamos is just incredible. This guy's a freaking legend all the way around. We got to see Bob Saget. We got to see Dave Coulier. So for me, I mean, it was what it was. I enjoyed it. I was sad to see it end. Really, I was.
I was too. I mean, it ended nicely, but there was more meat on the bone in the show, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, and also, talking about being a dad again, that first 2 weeks, the sleepless nights, I was able to just breeze right through the entire final season of it, or the entire final section of the episodes. Yeah, it was fantastic. I thought I enjoyed it. I would have loved to have seen it gone one more season. Not quite sure where the popularity dipped. I mean, season 1 was fantastic. Maybe it's because there wasn't enough focus on the new characters. I didn't necessarily want to see the new characters. I wanted to see more of the old school characters. I would have loved to see more of a role for John Stamos, Bob Saget. But no, for me, it was well done. And my wife is a big Boy Meets World fan.
So's mine.
She was excited when.
So's mine.
Okay, okay. So I'm sure your wife was in a similar situation when Girl Meets World came out. My wife was thrilled. EJ, that show was horrible.
Yes, it was. We watched the first season. We didn't like it. We hated it.
It was terrible. See, and that wasn't the case with Full House. They did a good job with Fuller House and giving it the reboot that it deserved. So I was happy with it.
Who do you think? Which character you thought was the most redeemed of all, in comparison to the originals, the showing?
So we're talking about the original characters that came back that were the most redeemed?
Yeah, which ones do you like? To me, it's Kimmy. To me, Kimmy was somebody I couldn't stand, and I love her on the show.
Yeah. I would agree with you. It was Kimmy, no question. DJ was the DJ that we saw when the show came to an end. Mm-hmm. Stephanie was pretty much Stephanie that we saw when the show came to an end. Kimmy Gibbler was annoying as all get up when the show came to an end, and I thought that her character was very nicely done. And you got to remember, her character basically fills in for Michelle, right? She had to assume that role, and she did it pretty seamlessly.
Yeah. Like, you forgot that they had another sister.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, seriously, you did. No, I think you hit it right on the head. And I'll tell you, the new character that I could not stand, that by the time the show was over, was Kimmy's husband.
You like Fernando?
I didn't like him at first. I loved
yes.
him at the end of the show.
Yeah,
really, it was
likewise.
Pretty funny by the end of the show.
No, likewise, I'm with you on that one. He ended up being somebody I really truly enjoyed as the show went on. Because at first I was like, what the hell? Yeah. Come on, stop being annoying. You know? I will say this, though, too, real quick, though. One of the good things about this show it did for me, and with my kid especially, it allowed me to, because he knew nothing about Full House before. He knew about Full House first. Obviously being 7 years old, So we started showing him in the last year the original Full House, and it took him a while to get used to it, and it took him a while to explain to him, okay, this is DJ. This is DJ when she was like 10, 11 years old at the start, and, whatever. And he's gotten into Full House now, and it's allowed me to actually, because I'm a nostalgic guy through and through. I started showing him Family Matters and other shows from the 80s that Hulu has now. So it's opened the door for me to show him quality sitcoms from our days. That's a cool thing.
Sure, and I think you can tie that into movies as well. I mean, you and I have had many conversations about it. Ninja Turtles. We've had conversations about Batman, right? Those are comic book characters that I grew up with, and you take a look at the last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle live action series that came out, or live action movies that came out. I enjoyed them. I thought they were fantastic. But the best part of all, they got my daughter hooked on them, and now she's into the stuff that I was into when I was a kid. That's the best part of it all. Same thing with the Ghostbusters. I'm a big Ghostbusters guy, and my daughter, she's digging the Ghostbusters right now. She was a Ghostbuster for Halloween, and so Anytime an old series that sparks that nostalgia for you that you enjoyed as a kid, if you can get your kids to relate to it, that's what it's all about.
It's the best.
Yeah, it is.
It took a while for us to get into the cartoons because I would show him He-Man and Thundercats, and he was like, "This is garbage." Like, oh, damn it! So the TV shows were actually a good way to, to bridge the gap there a little bit. We touched on Elvis a little bit on top of the show. I gotta tell you, my heart has really, like, Lisa Marie Presley, and this is a tragedy she's gone through, not just recently with losing her son, Benjamin, to suicide, but just in general, her life in general, of tragedies. Like, my heart really goes out to Lisa Marie Presley, and it's what she's gone through. And right now, currently, she's going through a custody battle with her ex-husband, Michael Lockwood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, gosh, I've always liked her. Like, I told you, when she was married to Michael Jackson, like, that era, forget the fact that she was married to Michael Jackson, my favorite, but to me, she was at her absolute peak in terms of her looks, in terms of the way she presented herself when she was with Michael. Like, I was in love with her. I was really in love. I would tell friends back then. I envied him. Him.
Yeah, no, it is sad to see. And gosh, I don't say anything now. It's been 2 years, almost 3 years. It's been 3 years since the 40th anniversary of Elvis's passing.
Right.
We went back to Graceland for the 40th anniversary. Elvis Week is a big deal. This goes on, a celebration that goes on for 8 days at Graceland. Right. If you're remotely interested in Elvis Presley, I highly recommend you go check out Elvis Week at Graceland. It's phenomenal. I mean, the stuff they have that goes on, it's beautiful. So anyways, my oldest daughter, Kobe, she's obsessed with Elvis, obsessed with him, just totally obsessed with Elvis Presley. So it's kind of our thing. It's kind of our thing to go to Elvis Week. So we go to the 40th, and Lisa Marie's there for the candlelight visual, and we see Lisa, and I guess it really sunk in at that particular time. And at this point in time, her son was still with her. But EJ, you see that particular night, there was 70,000 people that walked by Elvis's grave at midnight for the candlelight vigil, that's unheard of.
No, it is unheard of. I agree.
And it's unbelievable. But every single person that walked by his grave said the same thing about having a soft spot in their heart for Lisa Marie. Every single person there, they walk by Lisa, and there's this feeling of just love, right? Like you just have this, you feel so bad for everything that she's been through, and it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And there's so much love for her for people that she has never even met, and that's a hard feeling. I'm sure that's almost impossible to understand what that feeling is like.
Right.
But no, I agree with you 100%. Your heart just aches for her, especially with the passing of her son now. You mentioned it with Michael Jackson. I mean, all the way through. I was reading a story, and I think that this really puts in perspective. From the get-go. You got to remember this. 1977, Elvis passes away. I'm reading a book from Letitia Kirk, who was Elvis' nurse. And she was living at Graceland. And Elvis had given her a painting. And I don't know why this story stuck with me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I have 2 little girls of my own. I don't know. But anyway, Elvis gives her a painting, and it's a painting of him. And she says, I watched Lisa walk by it, stop at 9 years old, or 7 years old, 8 years old, somewhere along the lines of that age. Stop, blew the Elvis painting a kiss, and said, "I love you, Daddy." And for whatever reason, that story just continued. I think about that story often when we talk about Lisa Marie. It's been unfair for her since that age. Since that age, it's been unfair for her.
Yeah. And this is what she knows. This is. Losing her father at a young age. Obviously, her son now. God. I remember I seen that news. I was just thinking, dude, this is just not good. And given also the issues she's had, with herself the last 10 years, with the divorce recently. She just had twins a couple years ago. It's. I don't know, man. My heart goes out to her,
Yeah, and you and I have had conversations about this. You bring up her time with Michael Jackson. For anyone who believes that was a sham, that was the furthest thing from a sham.
Oh yeah, without question. And especially the stories you hear now, in hindsight. Like, when Michael died, Lisa Marie had an interview with Oprah a year later. I don't know if you've seen this yet. And she opened up. Now, granted, this is not the first time she's spoken to Oprah about Michael publicly. I think it's actually either the second or third time. But she laid out some stuff that even people like me who was invested didn't really know about until she said herself. Like, I don't know, it's just weird. Like, Lisa Marie didn't realize how much he loved her after he passed away. His capability to love her was hard because of, she was saying, and she said back then too, which is something we confirmed for years, all the sycophants around him. You know, it made it hard for him to really embrace her fully because so many people around him wanted him to do other stuff, you know, perform and this album and this promotion, this and that she didn't understand. You know, she said herself that she didn't come to a place of understanding how much he loved her until after he passed away.
Yeah, it's an unreal situation when you really think about it. You know, that poor lady has been through so much, and your heart really, truly just breaks for her.
The reason they got divorced, right? The reason they got divorced is because he wanted kids with her, and she was saying, "No, I'm not gonna have kids with you until you can straighten out all this stuff that's going on." So he said, "Well, then I don't know." Michael had a habit of pushing people away from him that cared about him, like, because he had so much things going on, you know, so much things. You know, he was still in the middle of a tour and all this, and like, I don't know. And the funny thing is that people forget that even when they got divorced in '96, they were still dating for a year after that.
Right. Right.
That video I showed you back a couple weeks ago, I sent to you on YouTube, with leaked around the same time that Benjamin passed away. That was, and I obviously I've seen the footage before in the past, but this is actual footage from the company that was actually following him that entire time in South Africa. This is after his tour, actually, too, his last tour. And yeah, they were seeing each other even after that. So again, I tell people all the time, if you think that was a sham, that was the furthest thing from a sham. In fact, you hate to speak for Lisa, but it seems like that might have been the last time that she was truly happy. Yeah,
I think that may be a fair assessment. Maybe.
Well, she had the album. She did the music in the 2000s. She finally got to do music 2000s, which is good for her. I'm not sure if there was happiness with her last marriage. Obviously, it ended horribly. They're obviously having a custody battle today, you know. But it's just sad that she hasn't figured out a way to truly feel grounded in a way where, despite everything that's happened around her, she still hasn't found a footing yet. And unfortunately, she's in her 50s now, I think, right? So, yeah, it sucks. It sucks. Like, it tells you, no matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter. If you're not happy, you're not happy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I'll tell you, you go through situations in life that recalibrate your mind.
Of course.
Right? And going back to a couple of things that we have mentioned, the struggles that my wife encountered with birth and me being a studio rat.
Right.
EJ, that kind of stuff that recalibrates your mind, and you change the way you view things. So instead of coming home at 10 o'clock at night, putting in an extra 2 hours of prep for the show tomorrow, just go home. Go home and have dinner with your family. Like, you start to think about things that you absolutely 110% take for granted. Mm-hmm. We take things for granted all the time. All the time. Little things that you don't even realize you take for granted because it's so minuscule in your day. But then when something big pops up, you start thinking about those minuscule things. Mm-hmm. Right? And so, yeah, in certain instances in life, certain events in life recalibrate your brain. And as you alluded to, no amount of money will make you happy. There's no question. I think 95% of people have gone through an experience where they have recalibrated themselves in some regard to understanding stuff that you have taken for granted. I had that moment in 2020. I think a lot of people have had that moment in 2020.
Yeah, this whole year has really shown me, because my wife and I, in our schedule, we'll go, you know, obviously. You know, you have to. You got to work, make money, pay bills, all that. But there was some positive to the COVID thing for us. Us slowing down and being able to restart, kind of take stock in life, stock with our kids, stock with our marriage, things of that nature. That was a positive with the COVID for us anyway. And I think, events like this, unfortunately, remind you that, even little things matter. Kids, they want little things. They don't want anything big. Just be there.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, that's you could come home with a $500 toy. Your kids just want you to be there. They don't care about that toy.
Oh, dude,
you learn that. You learn that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Like my son Eli, his big thing now, he wants to play cards with me every day. Play cards. That's all he wants to do. Play cards. Play Crazy Eights. Yeah. She's really good at, by the way, for the record. I don't know if you saw the post I put up like about a month ago where we had taught him the game that night, actually, and he had beat me, I think, 2 or 3 times. So I sent his ass to bed.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I put on Facebook. It was pissing me off because he had learned the game that day, and he beat me like a couple times. I'm like, oh, hell no. Get your ass to bed. We ain't having that right now.
Yeah, I got criticized a little while back. Boy, this is a while. I want to say this was about 7-8 months ago. My wife was filming my daughter and I. We were playing basketball on our Nerf hoop, and I'll let her hang around. Like, if we played at 10, I'm going to let her hang around. It's going to be, it's going to be 8-8. She's not going to beat me. I'm not going to allow her to beat me. I will not. I will allow her to stay close enough to where she doesn't get frustrated.
Right.
And we were playing, and it was 8-8. My 5-year-old started talking shit to me. And I said, okay, all right, well, that's the end of this. And I dunked on her.
What?
And my wife happened to be recording it when I did it. And I posted it to Facebook, and I got criticized for it. And I went back and looked. Yeah, it looked pretty bad. I didn't realize. I dunked on her. I mean, that was a Kobe on Dwight Howard type thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad my wife caught that. But yeah, I got criticized for that one.
Nah, that's great. That's awesome. I'm getting a visual now of that too as you're saying that. Was it an actual hoop? Was it like indoor thing?
It was an indoor thing. Yeah.
Right. That's great. Good Lord. Did we miss anything else on this conversation?
No, man. I think we've covered it all. It's a good time. I'll tell you, it's relaxing to talk about a variety of different topics. Every day, 7 days a week, my show is running, and it's sports. And EJ, I try to keep it exactly sports. I try to keep politics out of it. I try to just talk sports because I'm on a news talk station, and so I'm literally sandwiched in political.
Do you wish you talk about politics? Like, do you wish you were able to talk about politics, or are you okay with that?
I talk politics anytime I want. I just prefer not to.
Oh, okay.
I mean, really, I could I'll sit and have a conversation with anyone that wants to talk politics. I prefer not to. I've learned that in this day and age, I believe that there's a niche right now for people that just want to hear sports. They just, even if it's just for an hour, they just want to hear sports, right? Because from both ends of the spectrum, it is in our face 24/7, especially with this being an election year. So, I talk sports 7 days a week, nonstop. It's sports. That's all it is. It's sports. It's sports. So to sit down and talk with you about life, talk about foolish things like Fuller House, it's refreshing. It's refreshing. It's a good conversation. It's fun.
Well, and that's the thing with this show. This show is now, in its 9th year, and it's gone from a sports-centric show to now just a variety. Like, obviously, there's a lot of sports on the show we talk about. And I would dare say about 60% of the stuff we talk about on the show is sports-related. But it's also something where, as I've gotten older, this show has become pretty much what my life is at that point. I'm not only into the sports, I'm into this and that, and I like to talk about it. So I love the variety. I love to create the environment of a variety. People come in and just talk about the hell they want to talk about.
It's refreshing. You have to do that from time to time. You have to.
Yeah, right. Because I'll be honest with you, I did for a while get burnt out on talking about sports. There was a time, I think, was it 2017? I was like, you know what? I don't think I enjoy this as much anymore. It feels like a chore. You know what I mean? So I should take a step back and kind of do what I want to do, and then make it sound more natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
You definitely do a great job with it. I always appreciate the invite. I always love coming on with you.
Well, I'll tell you what, it won't be another 2 years. How long it was before you? When you last on the show, like last year or maybe early last year, I guess.
Nah, it was a while ago. Yeah, it might have been last year. It was definitely before I found out I was having another kid. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Although when you add COVID to the mix, it actually feels like 5 years.
That's not a lie. Yeah, it's not a lie.
Anyway, Jordan, we'll talk soon, brother.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate the invite. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. You take it easy, all right?
All right, you too.
All right, man. Bye. All right, on the line, of course, again, this week, Marc Francois. More political bullshit to talk about. Mark, what's up, bud?
Not a whole lot, man. Just hanging out. I have recently discovered a new way to help wash my brain of this, like, repeating shit that is our news cycle.
Explain.
And
I want to hear this.
That is the Graham Norton show on YouTube. Do you ever watch the Graham?
I've
Norton
heard
show?
of that show actually. But
okay, so you'll see clips of it going viral all the time because celebrities do things like if it caught on broadly in the United States, there's no way celebrities publicists would continue to let them go on the show. So the Graham Norton show airs, I believe, on one of the BBC networks. And it has been on British airwaves for like 30 years. It is the most popular nighttime show, late night show like The Tonight Show or Late Night or any of those others.
right.
But it's just way more wild and raucous than any couch you're going to see in New York or LA, because A, the guests are drinking the whole time. half the time they're drunk before they come out. And they put all four of the guests on the red couch all together. So it's usually like a book person, a theater person, a TV person, and a movie person with a musical act later in the show, and then they join the couch for one segment after their performance. That's like most of the episodes follow this format.
Yeah, I've seen the show before,
And
but I just don't know the details.
My God, like the stuff that erupts on the red couch is absolutely hilarious. And there's one famous one in particular with Matt Damon and Bill Murray where they were drunk when they got there. They had been at the Monuments Men premiere with George Clooney, and he got them drunk on
That doesn't surprise me one bit, by the
tequila.
way. That doesn't surprise me one
And
bit.
then they continued to get more drunk as the show went on. And there's a couple times where you see, like, Graham Norton looking to the producers like, I don't know what you want me to do here. It is amazing, and I laugh myself silly. And
Well,
it is a great mind number to current events.
Yeah, 90 days is a long time from now, from Election Day.
Oh yeah,
And we were
think about
reminded,
2016 and all the crazy shit that happened in the 90 days leading up to the election.
And we were reminded of that today because Joe Biden, for his own credit, he's been under the radar. Obviously with COVID and all that. He's been skating by, not saying anything out of line other than the comments about Wayne Black on Charlamagne the God's show back in the Breakfast Club back in May, I think it was.
Oh my God, yeah, that was.
That seems like
although not egregious.
Yeah, but by the way, that sounds like eons ago, though. To be honest, that feels like years ago. And then Joe Biden today had his latest hold my beer moment today. He was on Yahoo doing an interview, and
acting like a Yahoo.
And basically, it's funny when one of my conservative buddies, made me aware of this situation. He goes, "Did you hear Joe Biden's latest you ain't black version now 2.0?" I'm like, "Oh no, here we go." Because when he's
now?
Like when my buddy, shout out to my friend Jason, by the way, Jason Gassiot. Whenever they, my buddy conservative friend Trumper is throwing out this shit like this, like red meat, it's something pretty bad. So I go on Twitter, of course, to find this shit, and basically he was quoted as saying this. I don't have the entire 2-minute layout, but basically the highlight.
You could paraphrase that. You could
right.
paraphrase
I have
top 10 of it.
Well, I have the quote right here, the main quote from what he said in the main sentence. Basically saying that unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes. And Twitter was on fire this morning with that shit.
Okay, well, so if I've come to learn anything during my arc of the last decade of civil rights enlightenment and the struggle broadly, it's that black folks and activists are extremely tired of screaming at this shit and pointing at it, and they want white folks to do it. So here we go.
I told you that already. Did I tell you that a couple episodes ago?
No, but I mean, I'm sure in our 8 years of doing this that we've had that conversation at some point or another. And if not you, I've had it with Jabari or countless other of my black friends who've been, graceful and beautiful in helping me pull my head out of my ass as it was inserted by the comforts of suburban upbringing. But so here we go.
Light moment.
First of all, I mean, if anything is a known about the struggle, it's that it's been black people's communal efforts to not be seen monolithically. So strike one, right there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to talk about the lack of known diversity in the American black community, look no further than the slave trade, in which black people's names, heritages, families, legacies, citizenship, humanist traits were all stripped of them, and they were treated as livestock. So sure, we don't know what parts of Togo or Ghana or the Ivory Coast they may hail from, because that history was quite literally stolen by our ancestors. So if I were the black members of Joe Biden's communications team, advisory team, what have you, I would have been going through the fucking roof, because that is just such a grossly unenlightened statement, especially given the moment of where we are at this turning point, this crossroads in the ongoing struggle for civil rights in this country. And while it still pales in comparison to the shit show that was the Trump Axios interview over the weekend, which we can get to in a moment, but it's things like this that it's like all you have. Okay, so in the leading up to the debates, this is kind of a tangent but a segue at the same time. Typically the strategy is you want to lower expectations on yourself and raise expectations on your opponent. Trump has made it so easy that if Joe Biden doesn't show up on the stage drooling on himself, to quote Jon Favreau today, he's going to look like $1 million. And then he goes out and does shit like this, and you're like, you just wrote like 6 different political action committees fucking next act. Like, what are you doing?
That's what I said. Exactly what
I
said, man.
If you didn't mean it that way, like, how can you be letting this happen when you have so few public moments and nationally televised moments? And if you actually feel that way, how is it possible that you are at this point in the Democratic nominee in 2020 and you still don't understand how problematic it is and like the caucasity of speaking about black people so monolithically?
I'll tell you what. Jabari had the best caption for this because I saw the video through his Instagram. Jabari's our boy Jabari Davis.
That's where I saw
Dunks Discourse. Yeah,
I saw it there this morning.
Co-host of the Dunks Discourse podcast, a good friend also too. This is what he posted actually as a caption under the video. He goes, "Quote unquote, the blacks are not a monolithic group. You fucking idiot. Can his handlers at the very least activate his shot collar whenever he's about to say something wild or even mildly problematic shit?" Simone Sanders. Simone Sanders.
This one
might. Up, man.
I have a feeling Charlemagne's going to be giving him Donkey of the Day tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Without question.
If he didn't get it already today, I haven't caught up on the Breakfast Club yet, but I have a strong feeling that Charlemagne he's the leader in the clubhouse for Donkey of the Day.
I've come a long way with Charlemagne, actually. I used to not like him a couple years ago, and I come a long way now. I really do appreciate his voice. I really do.
Man, I love the Breakfast Club. It is such a cool
I actually
platform.
listen to I actually follow his podcast, his other podcast with Andrew Schultz.
Yeah, I like that one, and I like
excellent.
a lot of the stuff he's done with Angela Rye, because they have this really fun. They did a limited podcast called Sibling Rivalry or something.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And they have a really funny relationship.
Yeah, I've come a long way with Charlemagne, to be honest with you.
They have this really hilarious bickering brother sister relationship that's pretty funny.
Right, Mark. Today
she calls him by his God-given name, Leonard.
Mark, today reminded me of the fact that I'm really getting tired of voting against people. I'd rather vote for somebody. 2016, I voted against Trump. 2020, I'm going to vote against Trump. I would rather vote for somebody. And Joe Biden today kind of reminded me, and I'm voting. You know, what for fuck's sake, dude? Give me something. You had as diverse a Democrat platform as you had, and this is the guy you're going to back? A 78-year-old senile fucking guy who's not with it? Like, seriously.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement and commiseration and sympathetic to everything you're saying, but I'm also resigned to the fact that we're just going to have to wait for 2024 for that one.
I am too. And again, the priority here for me anyway. I have my views and why I'm going to vote for Biden. People will say, well, what the? I actually got to, it's funny, Mark. I got into a little bit of couple conversations with some really some conservative friends of mine in the last week or so because they've now found out I'm going to vote for Biden, and they ask why. And I told him why. And even when I see shit like this, for example, and I know it's abhorrent, obviously, but if I'm still willing to vote for Biden even if he says this shit, take a look in the mirror and see why I'm not voting against Trump. Why am I voting against Trump anyway? Your guy's still that bad.
We already kind of teased it, but look no further than the Axios interview that he did on Sunday with
Oh my God! Oh, and by the way, Jonathon Swan, great job.
Well, okay, but yeah, I have to say but on that.
Why?
And this is not in any way, shape, or form a criticism of Jonathon Swan because he did exactly what you're supposed to do in that situation. It's a criticism against the media and the White House press corps broadly, and that is he did something that nobody has really been successful in doing except maybe Chris Wallace, and that is asking a follow-up question.
Yeah. There
have been a handful of moments in the press room where he's gotten cornered by the likes of Caitlin Collins or Wei-Jia Jiang or Paula Reed or, one of these people, April Ryan, Yamiche Alcindor, I can go on. But those are always just moments. And the follow-ups don't continue to come. And they're not a consistent thing when he gets on the microphone and spouts disinformation. And Jonathon did that. He was like he did not let him divulge into he just kept asking the follow-up.
He pressed him.
And if more reporters would stop trying to treat Trump like a typical president, they keep trying to fit him in the same communications box. And say and treat him like a rational president, and you just can't. It's like, if you're a rational person, you can't argue with an irrational person, or you can't argue a rational point against an irrational point because of the inherent irrationality. And so they're treating Trump, they're trying to cover him in a way like as though he's some normal president, and they've done over the course of the last 4 years a pretty shitty job of it. A few moments notwithstanding, and Jonathon Swan really gave me some hope for journalism this weekend by asking even the most basic follow-up questions.
No,
it was wonderful. It was painful. I couldn't watch more than a couple of minutes of it at a time. I had to read transcripts because.
Oh, really?
It was
I watched the entire 40 minutes.
I mean, I've listened to highlights. I tried to get through the whole thing. I made it about 5 minutes.
No, I watched it because look, I have to admit, even with all this shit, Trump's a showman. He's funny as shit.
Oh,
so
see,
I'm going. I enjoy
the sound
that.
of his voice to me is nails on a chalkboard.
No, not to me, man. To
I
me,
feel
it's hysterical.
It's like I can feel my brain cells dissolving faster than if I'm smoking pot.
Let's take a test.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, my wife hates him. She can't deal with. She can't deal with the voice. I actually had the interview on headphones because she was watching Glee.
You know what it almost sounds like sometimes to me.
What?
Like he saw Analyze This and thinks that's what wise guys are like, and so he's like, and he idolizes wise guys. So he has this, he's doing this bad impression of a caricature in the first place.
Right.
And that's his speaking style. He thinks he's Tony Soprano or something, and he's doing a shitty impression of Paul Vitti.
This is the second. This is the second interview in a row where he's actually sat in a chair with no handles on the seats. He sits and slouches down.
That was something that came up on Pod Save today. Dan Pfeiffer made a joke that this was Trump's not used to seeing a lot of like real game day pitching, and this was the first time he'd seen live pitching in a while. So he really like shat the bed and swinging out of his shoes.
He misses me on the campaign trail. Like he actually did a thing today on in Ohio.
That's the only thing he knows. That's the only thing he knows how to do.
He's a showman.
That's the only thing he ever did throughout his presidency, because he certainly wasn't overseeing the State Department or managing our global network of alliances with like 1,100 positions, sub-cabinet appointments, or initially it was like over 400, and then it ballooned as people started consolidating at cabinet level positions. But it was something like altogether over 1,000 cabinet and sub-cabinet level positions were not filled by this administration, and this work is just piling up in all these bureaucratic departments.
Real quick, breaking news here, real quick. Joe Biden released a statement today on Twitter about apologizing to the.
This is like happening as we're recording.
Well, he tweeted 9:03 p.m. It was about an hour and a half ago. I'll read his tweet.
Okay.
He goes, earlier today I made some comments about diversity in the African American and Latino communities that I want to clarify. In no way did I mean to suggest the African American community is a monolith, not by identity, not on issues, not at all. Throughout my career, I witnessed the diversity of thought, background, and sentiment within the African American community. It's this diversity that makes our workplaces, communities, and country a better place. My commitment to you is this: I will always listen. I will never stop fighting for the African American community, and I will never stop fighting for a more equitable future. He didn't write this. He didn't write that shit, dude. He didn't write that.
When I hear that, it's like, well, and the thing that I've always suspected about Joe Biden is like that he has a good heart, and so if I'm guessing, and this is totally putting words in his mouth and with no expertise whatsoever, I'm just going to make this point.
Yeah.
I get the impression, my takeaway from that is that the point he was trying to make is, that, for example, the political interests as understood by candidates has been relatively more simplistic and unified among the black community, and perhaps that the Latino community has traditionally been wide and varying in its support of a whole host of political issues. And if that's the point he's trying to make, sure, I get that. Maybe he's saying
it's funny you said that. It's funny you said that because Brian Tyler Cohen, I think he's from MSNBC or something like that. No, he has a podcast somewhere, political podcast. He just tweeted after this. He goes, Republicans turned on the fake outrage machine, and instead has gave Biden the opportunity to show what he's capable of doing, what Trump isn't, apologizing. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
There you go.
Good point. Great point.
That's the thing that I think helps Joe Biden recover and always bounce back from this, litany of gaffes that he's made over the course of his career, is that he genuinely comes across as like a sweet, caring, sensitive man, and I feel that like, while he may not have thought he was saying anything wrong at the time he said it, obviously it came out of his mouth freely and comfortably.
Right.
He's somebody that could have his communications advisor or press secretary or whatever the hell they call it at the campaign stage come to him and explain to him exactly how badly he just stepped in it, and he feels genuine remorse. Like he's going to go to bed and think about that. It's going to keep him up at night. Like he's going to feel badly about it when he's on the treadmill or something. All those things that we do when we're assholes to each other in life, when we fuck up and we owe people apologies. He's going to say he's sorry. He's going to try to course correct, and he's probably going to feel bad about it privately. So, to me,
hold on, Mark. Let me play a little devil's advocate here, because we say that, okay? Does Donald Trump get the same grace from people too? Like, we're willing to give Biden a chance to correct himself. Does Donald Trump? And by the way, the right is going to say that. Why is it you give Biden a second chance, but Trump is like, fuck you?
The easiest, lowest hanging fruit I can point to on that to support my firm, quick, and staunch no, full stop, is the Central Park Five.
Right.
Because, for example, a great example of something where Donald Trump chose the wrong course, was clearly on the wrong side of history, and and given the opportunity to course correct at repeated points over the arc of 30 years, most recently in like 2017 or 18 when Netflix released Ava DuVernay's When They See Us, which was amazing. And if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you do. But, you know, that came up again because he was the president during that, and obviously his role in the Central Park 5 story came up in the film or the series. And, you know, he's made no apologies for that. He's made no apologies for grab him by the pussy. You know, he's never shown any ability to take any kind of remorse for his bad behavior, his objectively incorrect things that he said. So, no, he's not afforded that grace. And to me, at least recently, I don't know enough about, like, I haven't followed politics closely enough, long enough to know enough about Joe Biden's past to say with certainty that he's apologized every time he's fucked up. But at least in the recent past, he's apologized every time he's fucked up.
Right. And that's what I was telling my friend of mine, a really good friend of mine from years back, conservative, but very, very good person. And she had posted something. A video.
Conservative, but very good person. Now you sound like a liberal.
Well, see, I mean, I have to.
That was so Freudian. You just rolled right.
No, but I had to draw a line a little bit because I had to understand who she is. Because this person's a lot more conservative than I am. I'm a little more moderate. You know what I mean? And
so what you're saying is she's not a Confederate flag waving white nationalist.
No, she's more close to the evangelical side of things. I mean, because we were friends in church.
Okay, just sidebar before you tell this story. Have you pressed her on the question of like how evangelicals broadly support Trump? I'm just curious. Yes or no?
Personally, no. Her personally, no. I actually made a comment here too on the DM we were talking about. About like I understand it feels like you're in a rock and a hard place because she even said like Donald Trump's his language the way he is I don't like it, but she said, and I quote, he stands for us, I mean Christians of course. So I understand
pro-lifers. He stands for the pro-life lobby, which overwhelmingly is a catch-all for the evangelical community.
And that's all that matters to them, really. A lot of people on that side of the aisle, really, on the far end, especially in that sector. And Mark, the reason I can say this is because I'm from that world. Okay, I used to be that world.
Well, yeah. Oh no, totally. I mean, by extent, not nearly like you are, but by extension, I'm pretty familiar too because of all my Kentucky family.
Right.
Church of God out there.
They look at Donald Trump as okay, well, this guy fucking really sucks. He's a horrible person, but he's through legislation passing all the things that we agree on. So it's kind of like a rock and hard place.
And here's where I would. So I have a really complicated relationship between my faith and my church because I feel like, especially having come to Jesus, in a overwhelmingly white suburban community, I saw a lot of things even within my church that I didn't really understand or agree with or like. And one of those things was some of the conversations that came up about like praying for gay people. And this was like during Prop 8. Obviously before the Supreme Court struck down DOMA and all that. This was during the Prop 8 campaign. And there was a lot of talk about, like, praying for gay people to see the light of their sins. And that kind of shit really rubbed me the wrong way. And when you talk about, who Christ is in the New Testament and what he did and sort of what the commission of Christ is as it's textualized, it doesn't align with a lot of the American evangelical community. And on a lot of fronts, racially, in terms of women's health and rights, the fact that, for example, the evangelical community broadly supports Donald Trump because he's quote unquote pro-life, but doesn't raise any, broad or unified alarms at the immigration policy, the child separation policy, which is still running rampant and being aggravated by COVID, and it's just not as covered.
Right.
But Mehdi Hassan's talked a lot about this and did a great interview with Jacob Soboroff recently as his book came out about called Separated, about the border crisis. So to me it just feels like there's a lot of hypocrisy there.
Oh, without a doubt.
And
this is why we've. Myself, my wife, came from that world. My mother, my mother is Republican. She came from that world, and she's disgusted by what's happened with the church in the last 20 years. And she can't stand Trump either. My mom is a George W. Bush diehard.
I voted for him in 2004.
So did
and
I.
I just missed voting for him in 2000 by 15 months.
My mom had George Bush dolls.
Because I wasn't old enough.
My mom had George Bush dolls, collectibles.
Yeah.
That's not.
No, I mean,
and she can't stand Trump.
We've talked about this before, man. I grew up I basically the house that I live in now is pretty much Ronald Reagan was riding his horse through my fucking living room 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's not an exaggeration. He and Bob Hope and their clique rode all over my damn neighborhood. So that, I mean, that era, George W. Bush 41 and Reagan walk on water in the Conejo Valley in Thousand Oaks, where I live.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, it's just like the disconnect I have now with that faction now at age 40 versus when I was at age 20. It's crazy in 20 years how I've looked at that world and I was like, wow, I was part of this shit 20 years ago.
Well, and when we talk about things like campaign finance reform, lobbying, deregulation of industry, healthcare reform, all these different things that have been horrifically corrupted by corporate money, and deregulate the regulations that need to be written for social media and tech companies. Mm-hmm. All these things were heavily exacerbated during the Reagan administration, because you had sort of, if you want to work it all backwards, you sort of have the robber barons running the country until the Great Depression, and they run it into the ground. Roosevelt emerges, puts all these socialist measures in place that massively redistribute wealth, but nobody's too upset about it because he just won World War II, and they're all getting rich anyway. But then you have this sustained campaign through Eisenhower, Truman, Johnson, all this, Kennedy, where little by little they're chipping away at things like Glass-Steagall, at banking regulations, constructing and deregulating the insurance industry, and really the sort of the golden age of deregulation began with Ronald Reagan, and I think sort of the last and most dangerous gasps of it are Trump. What we saw under the Bush administrations with healthcare deregulation, and then with just broad and indiscriminate deregulation under Trump. These problems are all interconnected, but a lot of it roots back to Reagan, because that opened the door to so much of where we are today.
Yeah. All right, I got less than 2 minutes. Quickly reaction. Your Lakers are playing like shit last week.
Yeah, they look like garbage. The shooting is really rough. I think the absence of Avery Bradley really can't be overstated, and the impact that's having on the team. He was the best perimeter defender on the team. He was one of the anchors of the bench, and he was shooting, I believe, about 35% from behind the three-point line, which this team is desperately needing. AD looks good, but he's up and down. LeBron isn't, he's kind of like in cruise control till playoffs now that they locked up the number 1 seed. But they're trying to work in Deion Waiters and J.R. Smith, who hasn't even hardly picked up a basketball to speak of in an NBA sort of way in 2 years. So I think they're going to regress to the mean. The team was shooting from the field, I believe, in overall shooting, which includes 3 points and 2-point field goals. I want to say they're in the low 30s, like 33 to 35%. And they're shooting in the 20s now, like 23, 24%. So they're going to regress to the mean over the course of the seeding games, and I think they're going to lock in for the playoffs. But really, man, I think it's that training camp weakness where all the shots are just short. The shit of just not playing for 4.5 months.
Well, they're lucky that.
But I like the unity I'm seeing. I like the energy I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing from Kuz, given how his season had been going to this point.
Well, they're lucky that
there's still a lot of bright spots.
Right, they're lucky that they the ones he's locked up already, and they have these games to use as scrimmages, pretty much.
No, but there's 3 teams in particular that are to me really dangerous right now, and that is Phoenix, Portland, and Oklahoma City. They all look markedly better than they did prior to the suspension of play. And Portland in particular looks like Game 7, Damian Lillard just shitting on dudes kind of Portland. They look really, really good. And Chris Paul has got Oklahoma City firing in ways that make them really dangerous in the first round. I don't think they get out of the first round, but I think they beat up whoever they play badly enough to make the second round a hell of a lot more interesting.
Well, we'll see. Well, playoffs start next week, so we'll see what happens. Well, next 2 weeks, we'll see what happens there. Got time to turn around. So, Mark,
quick question,
quickly,
quick counter question for
quickly.
you. Baseball, where's it go? Is it going to work?
Oh,
is it going to
Jesus
survive?
Christ. Well, they're trying. I mean, I know. Manfred initially said, we're going to shut the shit down if we don't get the shit together, and then he backpedaled and said, yeah, we're going to try hard. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes.
We're doing what now?
I'm going to say yes, because I think, the initial scares, but all this stuff, I think they'll figure it out. You're going to get positive.
I think college and pro football are still in deep shit.
College football, definitely deep shit. NFL, I think commerce will still dictate that. I think we'll get at least a quarter of the season into the NFL season, then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
So, Mark, we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
All right, buddy. Take care, all right?
Have a great weekend.
All right, buddy. Be good.